All right. Welcome this evening. Mike and I will be talking to John Siuntres, uh, host of the Word Balloon podcast, which has been around since 2005. I think it was probably one of the first podcasts that I was aware of when I started listening to comic book podcasts. How about yourself, Mike?
I always consider it one of the more esteemed podcasts. He seems like one of the few podcasts actually doing extremely in-depth interviews with a lot of creators.
So let's go ahead and bring him in and get this underway.
Hey guys.
Hey, evening.
Hi, John.
How are things in Chicago? That's correct. You're in Chicago?
Yeah, I'm in Chicago. Things are weird. There was a report that came out. I don't know if you guys saw it a day or two ago. One of our aldermen who goes back to the Chicago 10 of the 68 riots and stuff, Bobby Rush, this alderman, his office was being used unbeknownst to him by police officers. And there's videotape of them at the height of some of the demonstrations and looting of them sacked out in his office, eating popcorn, drinking coffee, feet on the guy's desk. And it's insane. And he got word that his office had been robbed. So he was checking the security cameras and instead found this crazy thing. So yeah, it's been a weird 48 hours. I mean, it was I think discovered 2 nights ago. And yeah, the mayor obviously commenting on it. The police have to comment on it. I mean, it's like, God, honestly, and forgive me for the moment of politics, but as if bad behavior by the police weren't already happening. Think of all the crazy instances that have happened since George Floyd's death. Yeah. It's insane. And it's like, guys, just common sense, be like, to the worst cop, all right, maybe I should tone it down a little bit. I mean, which good Lord, is that asking too much? So again, forgive the politics, but there we go.
It's okay.
Yeah,
so before we get into talking about, your 15 years of podcasting and
15 years.
All that. Yeah. So do you remember when you got into comics?
Sure.
Do you remember which comic it was?
Well, I'll tell you two distinct memories. One, as a very small child, my father would take me to his barber, Vince's barber shop, and he had 12-cent comics. And again, I mean, I was born in 64, so this is like 69, maybe 1970. And I distinctly remember seeing Deadman comics, always DC. I didn't see Marvel until I had an allowance and started buying comics. But it was, I remember Deadman distinctly. I remember Flash distinctly. I remember Green Lantern and Gil Kane art distinctly. And I mean, really, I was spoiled because really it was Carmine Infantino doing Deadman or Neil Adams, one of the two. And like I said, I definitely know it was Gil Kane, Green Lantern, and it was definitely Infantino Flash stuff. And these are, this is like really like the best of DC in the late 60s. So that was cool. And then when I was getting my own allowance, I got 50 cents a week, let me tell you. And this is in the 20-cent comic era when I was able to buy them for myself. And I do remember my very first comic. I don't remember the number of it, but it was a Superman comic, and the cover was him flying from a window into an office, changing into civilian clothes, but he had adopted a new secret identity, Chris Delbart, the Wolf of Wall Street. And that was the whole point of this 20-story issue, was Superman's new secret identity. And it was awesome. It was a typical Bronze Age, kind of switch things around. And I know when I was talking to Brian Bendis, he's like, he recently had Superman and Lois working undercover. And Superman kinked up his hair. And I said, and it was too late. It was already at the producer. I'm like, you got to make him Chris Delbart. And he goes, Chris Delbart. And I sent him the card. He's like, seriously, why didn't I know this a month ago? He goes, it totally would have been Chris Delbart. So instead it was this guy Chaz. And and it was hilarious. He had a perm. It was very, very funny.
Oh, yeah. That's the one where they thought about like making him just be able to grow a beard at will.
Yes. And I love it. And I was talking to Brian, but I'm like, how does that work? Just, all right, ZZ Top. There we go. Boom, real fast.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right.
So, how did you're a radio TV host, is that correct? And
yes.
How did you end up translating that or using that to get into the comics podcasting field, especially it was pretty much in the early days.
Yeah, I mean, a couple shows beat me to the air. I mean, I always use the old comedian George Burns used to say about radio comedians. We were all in the top 10. There were only 8 of us, and that's kind of what it was, you know. Oh God, I can't even remember one guy's show's name, but Augie the Bleak beat me to it. Pipeline and Collected Comics Library, Chris Marshall, and Comic Geek Speak. They all beat me by a few months. I started on May 5th of 2005. And what had happened was I was still in radio, but I spent from 1990 to 2000, about 10 years, in sports talk radio, producing, but also hosting and reporting. And then my next job by 2001, I was working behind the scenes at a talk radio network, Sporting News Radio. It became the Yahoo Sports Network. I'm not even sure what it is anymore. As far as it exists, but I don't know the name of it anymore. So they were aligned with Sporting News Magazine. Paul Allen, one of the Microsoft billionaires, bought the magazine, bought the radio network, merged them, had an online presence. So I was doing stuff online and also making commercials and making features, but I really wanted to keep my hand in hosting and reporting. Mm-hmm. So Mr. Allen he created the Sci-Fi Museum in Seattle. And I was checking out the website, and I saw that they were doing a workshop with kids featuring comic book artists teaching art classes and stuff. And podcasting was still brand new. And I contacted, because, you know, it was classic being owned by an internet billionaire. Hey, if you got any ideas, you know, let us know at the company and we'll consider them. And I'm like, hey, do you want a podcast for the website for the Sci-Fi Museum? I'd be happy to do it, whatever. And I got a response like, hey, that's a great idea. No thanks, but you should do that. That's a really good idea. And I'm like, great. And God, I'm really glad that happened. So I got wordballoon.com. I got the domain. I started the website. At the time, I wasn't aware of iTunes running podcasts. So really for like the first 14 months, I was just posting MP3 files on my website. And a listener is like, you know, you ought to go to iTunes because a lot of people are putting their podcast on iTunes now. And I'm like, yeah, all right. You know, okay. You know, I mean, really, I didn't have a lot of I still don't have a lot of technical savvy. But I mean, yeah, you know, so and luckily I was in early enough and had the radio background that I felt I could go to creators with a bit of a sense of how to do an interview without being the Chris Farley show. If you remember Saturday Night Live, yeah, remember that thing you did? That was awesome. You know, and you don't want to be like that. You want to, you know, have an agenda, or not an agenda, but you know, have an idea of what you want to talk about, just as a fallback.
You watched this channel, right?
Nice. I jam myself all the time, gentlemen. I don't blame you. That's all right. No, you know, I mean, you want to leave things open for a conversation because you never know what's going to come up. And you want to leave yourself open to go down that road if something interesting happens. And so I have as a fallback a line of questions, and I used to write them down, but now pretty much, unless it's somebody brand new, I usually can keep it in my head and know other things I want to talk about and stuff. And also, having done it for 15 years, and God, several of my guests have, you know, been on 10 times or more. Bendis and Rucka and Fraction, Mike Oming,
up and comers.
Yeah, good dudes. Yeah, real good dudes. And women. Kelly Sue DeConnick is a great Gail Simone. So, yeah, you know, at this point, what's that? The Young Guns? Yeah, I know.
Yeah, DC's new Young Guns.
Exactly. Yes. Very true. Very true. You know, I'm trying to get better, actually, and get more younger writers and artists on and stuff. And, and actually, I got to say, since the virus, DC's been incredibly cooperative and like, hey, we know you know a lot of people, but is there anyone you've never had before that we can help you get? And immediately I'm like, I'd really like to talk to Grant Morrison. And they're like, okay, we can probably make that happen. And they did. And me and Grant and Liam Sharp talked about Green Lantern in particular, but a few other things. And yeah, it was terrific, man. I enjoyed it. It was wonderful. So there you go.
Mike,
I started, so anyway, that's how I started. I started back in 2005 and there we go.
Okay. This might be. I've been listening to you for a long time.
I think the first time.
what do you think is the most esoteric line of conversation you've had in some of your interviews?
Define esoteric, because I'm not sure in what context you mean esoteric.
Just in the specificity. I've listened to you and Fraction go on and on about like
okay, like just like weird tangents of music and film but isn't that for me that's the fun part. Yeah, I mean, honestly, and truly, I think listeners appreciate it because, God, you're right. I mean, they could be really random stuff. But if I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on it. If not, it's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just say random shit or whatever. But anyway, I think it's great when a listener realizes, oh my God, that guy likes to put ships in bottles. So do I. And then they can go to a con and be like, hey man, I do that. Did you ever do this? Did you ever use this stuff? And all of a sudden they've got a connection with the creator beyond, hey, I really like your book. And I think that's awesome. And I think it's a two-way street. I think the creators get excited about, and I mean, listen, they love going to the shows, but after a while, yeah, all right, I'm signing your book. Okay, nice to meet you. Yeah, I like Batman too, whatever. But no, it's like it's the stuff that comes from left field. That's where it's like, hey, wait a minute. Oh, really? You collect stamps? I collect stamps. Let's talk about that for a second. So there you go. I can't think of like what's the most random thing, because they all kind of do conflate. And I'm so like, actually, all right, maybe talking to Jeff Darrow, we both love old time radio, and in particular, Gunsmoke and Dragnet. And because both are so interesting, Gunsmoke, the sound effects, it sounds like somebody had a microphone going in 1870. I mean, really, you hear them walking, and they're walking on like a wooden sidewalk and everything. I mean, my God, literally, like they walk in, they sit down, you can hear the keys for the jail cell, jingling or whatever. It's insane. And it really it's a shame because radio really got good right when television was really happening in the 50s in terms of sophistication of writing and sound effects and stuff. And like I said, now I know you guys might be like, whatever, but and I'm not saying that you are, but Darrow and I literally, like, we spent 10 minutes talking about how much we both love Gunsmoke, and that was fantastic. You guys know Jeff Darrow?
The name's familiar.
Well familiar.
He's done a lot of work with the Wachowskis. He was one of the conceptual artists on The Matrix. Does a lot of weird comics, like his character was Shaolin Cowboy. But he and Frank Miller did a series called Hard Boiled with Image in the 90s. Really like one of those artists kind of guys where, he's really, he's amazing and a really cool dude. He's living in France now, so I don't get to talk to him as much.
I know that I think I first heard heard of your show from listening to the Around Comics podcast, and when you would hang out with those guys. And I remember one of the things that I kind of remember from back then is, always talking about the Bendis tapes. Can you kind of, because, those are also fun to listen to because, and I saw on your website that, you talk about them and what they mean to you as a broadcaster.
Jesus, Brian has become a very good friend in these 15 years. And it was really very nice the way that it just sort of happened. Certainly when I started, I wanted to talk to him. And in 2000, I started again in the, May of 2005. So in August of 2005, I had put together enough shows that I made a data CD with a bunch of MP3s on it. And I gave them to writers and artists that I really wanted to get on the show. And in particular, it was Greg Rucka and Ed Brubaker. And I don't think Matt was there, but Brian was. And by January of 2006, he did our first show. And he really had a good time. And he's an old Howard Stern fan. So he really likes unfettered conversation. And we did our thing. And a month later, I think it was late February of 2006 was the first New York Comic Con when they started doing regular shows again at the Javits Center. And I went and I saw him and we were talking. And that was a weird show because they didn't anticipate how big of a crowd they were going to get. So they locked down the Javits Center and what the fire marshal. is like you got too many people in the room. So people couldn't get in until people left. And literally they'd count off 10 people leaving, and then 10 people would walk in. And I mean, it didn't matter who you were. Victor Gorlick was the president of Archie. It's like, I demand to be let in. I'm the president of Archie. And, the fireman said, I don't care who the hell you are. Get back in line. Shut up. It was fantastic. And Dan DiDio was stuck. I saw Dan. He was stuck in line. So the trick was don't leave the room. But it wasn't a big, giant room. It was like, it wasn't, because it was, again, it was like they didn't realize so many people were going to come. So it was in a big room, but it wasn't in one of the huge rooms. And so yeah, Brian is like, it was like Convention of the Damned. You kept circling the room. And you see the same stuff over and over again. And Brian's like, you can sit with us. And it was him, David Mack, and ONeill. And that's when I really got to know those guys. And they were terrific. And Brian's like, hey, I got my message board at Jinx World. And a lot of questions have popped up. And I try to ask them. He goes, could we do a podcast where we answer all my fan questions? I'm like, that would be terrific. So we did it. And it took us, I'm not kidding, like 4 or 5 hours. And by the end, by the fourth hour, both of us are just slap happy and laughing. And he's like, this is fantastic. Can we do this every few months? And I'm like, that would be great. And really, man, I mean, that's when my listenership really exploded and went from dozens to thousands. I mean, really, the first Bendis tapes got 2,000 downloads. And I'm like, Jesus, this is like a thing. And it was great, man. And also people from all over the world, because Bendis has fans from all over the world. And it really kind of helped solidify my credibility as a someone that had talked to a big creator. And he was really sweet and told all of his Marvel buddies, talk to John. He knows what he's doing. And I could also say that about DC people like Brian Azzarello. Rucka was a DC person at the time. Brubaker was. And yeah, they all just kind of trusted me because I kind of knew what I was doing when it came to conducting an interview. So there you go. All because of Bendis.
You got another question, Mike?
Not at this exact second.
Okay. Go ahead. So, I know the big news today was the passing of Denny O'Neill.
Yeah.
Did you ever get to talk to him?
I did. I got to talk to him 3 times solo, and then also at Terrificon just a couple of years ago. He came on Sunday, and we did a Robin panel. And it was him, Mike Barr, Tim Seeley, Pete Tomasi. I think that's it as far as guys on the panel. And he was
a pretty solid group.
Unbelievable, man. Seriously, the first time I met Mike Barr, that was awesome. Pete's been on a few times. Pete's a good dude. Seeley's a good friend. But yeah, it was great. And Denny, the first time I talked to Denny was in 2006. They had released, for a while, they were making great original paperback books called DC Universe, and Christopher Priest wrote one about the Green Lanterns. I'm trying to remember Devin Grayson wrote one about the Titans, and Denny adapted the first 20 or so issues of his Question run into a book, and it was called Helltown. And I'm a massive fan of the Question. His run with Dennis Cowan was just unbelievable. I love even the original Steve Ditko stuff, and it's interesting because Denny really took it in a 180-degree direction from Ditko's original kind of absolute, black and white, good versus evil philosophy. And Denny's was a much different, more liberal philosophy, and it was very interesting and great, really cool. And he'd recommend books in the letter column afterwards, books about the Zen philosophy and stuff. Fascinating guy. And so that was my first conversation. And then in the last few years, his son Larry had discovered that conversation, and it's like, it'd be great if you want to talk to Dad again. And I'm like, I've been wanting to talk to your father for years, but poor Denny, he had a really rough last 20 years of his life. Yeah. I mean, just heart problems. And at the time when I spoke to him the couple times in 2018, he was jogging and I think he was jogging, or maybe he was in a car, but he suffered a massive car accident that he did walk away from, thankfully. But it was and he was, in his late 70s at the time. Maybe 79. I think he was 81. They said when he passed 2 nights ago. But he had a nurse coming and staying with him just to kind of help him out and everything, kind of an assisted living situation. Luckily in his home, so he was able to stay comfortable. Mm-hmm. But Larry's like, my dad's just sitting around. it would really, be great for him. I'm like, it would be my pleasure to talk to your father. My God. And it was so great. And he had just written this amazing autobiography. I don't remember the title right now. So we talked about that. And I said, Denny, I go, this is great. And I didn't want to get in the way of his story because he really did want to talk about his life and everything. There was a little bit of comics in it, but not really that much. And I'm like, all right. I'm like, Denny, could we do like a Batman conversation in a few months? Absolutely. No problem. So he came back and we did a good 2 hours on Batman. So I really felt like, with those 3 conversations and then the Robin panel that we did at Terrificon and stuff. Yeah, I got to kind of know him. And Jesus, I mean, the guy's work speaks for itself. I mean, he was a wonderful writer. I mean, not only at DC, his stuff at Marvel, his stuff at Charlton. I mean, he was just a really incredible guy that from 1964 to the late 90s was, cranking out great comic books.
Yeah, he was at the Empire Con here last year in April, and I sat down and interviewed him for 20 minutes because he was just sitting there. I was like, how can he just be sitting there by himself and nobody going up to his table?
Wow. It's the generational thing, man. I mean, that's the thing. I don't know how many comic fans under 40 kind of understand who he was and everything. They might have heard the name and they might be aware of things like the Green Lantern, Green Arrow, Hard Luck Heroes and stuff, I don't know, but yeah, I mean, it happens all the time. I know 20-year-olds who have no idea who David Letterman was. I mean, it's stuff like that. Both of you are like, what? Who? I'm just kidding.
I know who David.
I don't know who David Letterman is.
But that's the thing. And no, my buddy Rob Burnett, I had him on the show last night. We were talking pop culture, movies, and stuff. And he's right. He's like the lifespan of pop culture is usually around 20 years, one generation. And then people start to not care because they're into whatever the new thing is. And so, yeah, I mean, I understand. I mean, again, how long? I mean, God, it hadn't been since it was, I guess, the early 90s because it was Legends of the Dark Knight. The last few full stories I remember, or like story arcs, I remember Denny writing, like Venom, creating the drug that Bane takes and everything. That was an amazing story about Batman and addiction. And a lot of that was very personal for Denny too, because he was a recovering alcoholic and stuff. So he knew about addiction and he knew about demons and stuff. It's really interesting, the various Batman writers that it's the dark side of their own personalities that feed their writing. I mean, literally, I was talking, and again, I don't mean to name drop, but I was talking to Scott Snyder last night. He was talking about that in terms of how he sees the Joker and Batman. And of course, Paul Dini wrote that very personal Batman story a couple of years ago. So it is kind of interesting how, that some of the best Batman writers have those kind of weird, demons or tragedies in their life that they're able to put in their stories.
Now, not to take a morbid turn, but have there been any creators that you maybe missed the chance to interview within 15 years because they passed? Or
yeah, absolutely. Joe Kubert and I were talking about doing a talk, and unfortunately, he passed before we could do it. Never got a chance to talk to Stan Lee.
Oh wow.
Yeah, well, it happens. What are you going to do? I'm trying to think of others that have passed that I was really like passionate about getting, because there are guys like from the Silver Age, like Alvin Schwartz, an old Superman writer. Never occurred to me to like talk to him, or God, I'm even trying to think, because sadly, God, I'm bummed about Denny. I'm still bummed about my buddy Marty Pasco passing away at the end of March and stuff, and at the beginning of April. Sweetheart of a guy, and then that was another guy that he'd been on the show a lot in 10 years, the 10 years that we would talk, and constantly emailing each other, even when he wasn't on the show, and because he had moved a couple times, and was just and he was a sweetheart of a guy, but he's like, oh, my equipment's in storage, John. I can't talk yet, but I promise I'll find it. And then he's like, oh, I can't find it. All right, I'll buy something, but let me wait till next month. And I'm like, all right, Marty, it's okay. And then literally, my last email with him was at the end of March. And he's like, yeah, John, I'm almost set. Give me a couple of weeks. And sadly, he died in a couple of weeks. So I'm like, oh, Marty, damn. And also, I miss my friend. I mean, we really became good friends. We were at conventions together, and I pretty much was the only guy he knew. And I'm like, guess what? We're hanging out all weekend. Don't worry about a thing. We're fine. And I'm going to introduce you to everybody. It happened in Cincinnati and also in Salt Lake City, in particular, those two shows. And yeah, man, no, that's the thing. Like, Denny, I respected the hell out of him, and it was an honor to talk to him. Marty was a friend, and it really sucks. And yeah, well, I mean, I kind of let myself, as I was doing the close and stuff, I did tear up for a second. I left it in because it's like, no, that's real. I mean, I could have taken another take and cleaned up, but I'm like, no, I'm sad. My friend passed away, and it sucks. No,
yeah. So sorry for the little dark turn.
No, man. Hey, it's comic book news, and that's okay. And again, I'd rather talk about these great people because again, generations forget, and sometimes it takes an obituary. It's like, oh my God, he did all that. Maybe I should read his stuff. He's and he was. Can you find a more significant Batman writer in the last 50 years? I mean, with all due respect to Scott Snyder and Tom King and Frank Miller and all the great writers, they would all be like, that's fine. Let Denny go first. I mean, in terms of like being at the top of the pyramid and everything. Absolutely.
He also kind of brought, Batman back to his roots after the 60s show.
Yeah. The Adam West show. Yeah. No, you're right about that. So, I mean, that's the thing. No, you gotta give Neil Adams and Denny O'Neill all the credit in the world of, really, bringing Batman back to the basics and making him great again and not a joke anymore.
Mm-hmm. So, well, not that you're probably going to be going to a lot of cons in the near future.
Not that anybody's going to be going to any cons in the near future.
Yeah, no kidding.
Well, you were at C2E2 the last, probably the last big one that was held. That must have been a little strange to have gone to that, then been put, everybody put in lockdown.
Well, and putting it in perspective, people were certainly aware in February of the virus. They weren't aware of the severity. People were wearing gloves. We weren't shaking hands, but we weren't social distancing. Yeah. We weren't wearing masks. And yeah, man, no, me and the creators that were there, that I mostly still talk to as friends and stuff, we're all, I refer to it always as the last con standing. And I know it was that last weekend in February, and then Sunday was March 1st. March 2nd, I'm driving into work. I was teaching a radio class at Columbia College in Chicago. And I had the news radio station on, and literally the news station's like, McCormick Place will be canceling its conventions in the near future due to the concerns over the coronavirus. And I'm like, oh yeah, kill 90,000 nerds that just showed up at the McCormick Place. Yeah, screw us. I mean, yeah, we're fucked. But everybody else, sure, we'll cancel it. We're worried about their health. But yeah, man, if Dave Mack had just come back from Italy.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And he had a mask and he was kind of freaking out and stuff. And I went to shake it. He's like, no. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. What? And he told me, he's like, dude, I'm sorry, but literally I was in Italy 3 weeks ago. So I don't know if I've got it. And I'm like, Jesus. And then the worst was Tom King and I were talking that all week afterwards. And he's like, I feel kind of run down. How about you? I'm like, I feel like hell, man. And I really didn't snap back to normal until Friday. And we're both like, and I didn't have of course, typical bachelor. I don't have a thermometer in the house, or I did. Now I do. So I'm like, I don't think I have a fever, but I really feel run down. I don't know. And then by Friday, I felt normal again. I'm like, all right, everything's fine.
So, well, if you're really looking to go to a con, you can go to the Tampa Bay con.
That's okay. I'll pass. It sucks, man, because I've really cultivated a great relationship with Terrificon at Mohegan Sun in Connecticut. And Mitch Halleck, the organizer, has become a very good friend, and I've become involved with programming the show, and they let me do pretty much any panel I want to do, and I end up doing 8 or 9 panels, and I have a blast doing it. I am beat by Monday, but that said, it's always a blast and a lot of fun. And we were going to have the Justice League cast. The cartoon, not the film cast, but the cartoon cast, with the exception of Carl Lumley, because Lumley doesn't do conventions, but everybody else was going to be there, plus Andrea Romano, the great voice director, and we were going to do a live table read.
Oh wow!
Oh man, and that's the thing, man. I got it. I'm friends with Susan Eisenberg, the animated Wonder Woman, who I love. She's a doll. She's the best. She's become a really good friend, and I just had Phil Lamar on for the first time. I've met Kevin Conroy a couple times. But really was looking forward to meet Michael Rosenblum. I really was excited to meet him. God, not only the Flash, but Lex Luthor, one of the best Luthers ever.
Yeah, one of the better Luthers, as it turned out.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I've been talking with Mitch, trying to hopefully next week we're going to be doing an interview. So,
oh, great, that's great, man. No, Mitch is die hard, man. You know, he's got 2 podcasts as well. He's got a great Indiana Jones podcast and a comics podcast that he does with Jerry, or I should say, a general pop culture podcast that he does with Jerry Ordway. Jerry's a sweetheart. I love Jerry. Yeah,
because a lot of the indie creators here in the Albany area, that's one of the big cons that they go to every year.
Cool. Yeah. No, I mean isn't that I love that there are these regions where there are just really cool creators and stuff, and Chicago is no exception. We've got a great collection of both mainstream artists and also indie artists as well. And it's been a pleasure to get to know all of them. And I always say it's the same thing when I covered sports and did sports talk radio. Because people are like, well, you're in sports. I'm like, no, I'm not in sports. The athletes are in sports. I cover sports. So no, I'm not in comics. I cover comics. And it's become more of a thing because of the way my broadcasting career has turned. I got not furloughed. I got let go, and it had nothing to do with performance, but just cutting corners during Corona, man. And I understand, and I don't really know. I mean, we'll see what happens in the future. I'm open to another radio job, but I'm also trying to make a go of it with the podcasts and stuff. And I've got sponsors and thankfully Patreon and stuff. And my people are very kind in their support of Word Balloon. And and I get ad revenue as well. So I mean, it's like, let's see if we can make a go of this.
Plus, you got a lot of creators who have a little bit more free time at home.
Absolutely. Well, literally, man, I'll tell you, Mike, I've done like almost 100 episodes since the beginning of March, and yeah, I can't believe it either. I've got the time, and everyone's saying yes, and some people have, Kickstarters and other things that they want to make people aware of, and other people were just like, well, this is the time. They're saying yes now. I want to grab them, and I figured I would be doing maybe 4 or 5 episodes a week. Pardon me. Sometimes I do 6 or 7, and it's like, holy cow. So I mean, I really have been doing a lot.
Wow.
Yeah. When I was approached to start writing for the Times Union blog, which I still kind of do, but
great.
But like you, since the coronavirus, then this has been the more preferred method of getting things done. So, but I'm not originally from New York, so when I moved up here, I've since become good friends with Ron Mars,
great guy,
Steve Orlando,
great guy,
and my turn to name drop.
No, that's good, man. No, they're great guys, and they're talented as hell. They're fantastic writers. Yeah. No, so, and both of them have become very good acquaintances. Absolutely.
Yeah, and always up to letting people know what they're up to. But so has it just been since the pandemic that you've switched over to the video?
Yeah, and I wouldn't say switched over. I would say like both. Because some people still are like, "Hey, can we just do audio?" And it's like, "Sure." Right. Remender was like that. He's like, "If it's okay, I'd rather just do audio." I'm like, "Yeah, of course." And I truly tell people, because I don't want them to be intimidated, that I've started doing video. I mean, a lot of shows have started doing video, and I realize that. 2 things. One, YouTube is the second biggest destination that globally everybody goes to, with the exception of Google. So it's Google number 1, then YouTube. And for years, others that are media savvy are like, "Are you putting your show on YouTube?" And I'm like, "Well, it's a podcast. It's an audio thing." They're like, "Put it on YouTube." So I started doing that a couple of years ago, and I've been meaning to do more video for several years, but I just didn't have the time, especially when I had a full-time radio job. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I'll get to it. And then literally before the pandemic, I put together a couple little things because I felt like you needed to see something other than a static picture, the way that a lot of my audio word balloons show up on my YouTube channel. Mm-hmm. So I put a bunch of images together, and one was it was a portion of a conversation with Bendis about bringing back Superman shorts, and what the big shorts debate, and it was very funny because it turned out internally at DC, half the creators are like, bring back the goddamn shorts, and the other half are like, the shorts are ridiculous, never bring back the goddamn shorts. And it was just, like, isn't that silly? And that's what they're like all talking about. And so it was only like 4 minutes long. It took 4 hours to put together with all the different images that I wanted to pop up, and finding the images too. And I mean, I've got rudimentary video editing skills, but this is really at the beginning. So when the pandemic hit and then I lost the full-time job, I'm like, well, I've got time and I may as well learn this, and it will help the podcast. And so I just started reaching out, and God, Rob Liefeld, Matt Fraction, among my first Howard Chaykin. And then the ball just started rolling. And truly, I mean, I worry that old time guests would be like, I don't want to do video. Can we just, and also I know with the combination of Zoom meetings and everything that a lot of the creators are getting sick of doing video as well. So I'm always like, hey, whatever you're comfortable with, if you just want to do video, or audio, that's fine. But I won't deny it's fun. And I use this same platform that you guys use, StreamYard. And it's terrific. I mean, it's real. And I even went for the bigger package in terms of being able to simulcast on more than 2 platforms at once. So when I do a live video, I'm doing it on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter via Periscope, and Twitch. Although I don't know why I'm on Twitch. I literally have like less than 20 followers on Twitch, but I'm like, I'll do it for a while.
I've mainly been on Twitch. I've mainly been on Twitch to watch Dave Wachter draw.
Dave's great. Dave's another buddy. Absolutely, man. I miss Dave. Dave used to live in Chicago. Yeah. He was one of my original Chicago creators before he moved to Pittsburgh and everything.
Yeah. And well, the StreamYard we're using today is just the basic, because this is pirate radio. But it still works.
There's no money here.
That's great, man. Hey, that's awesome. No, it's a great platform. It's a fantastic platform. And because I was trying Streamlabs and some of the more intricate ones that you need more tech savvy. And again, I spoke to my buddy, Rob Meyer Burnett, who has a great YouTube show. He directed, I don't know if you guys know the movie Free Enterprise. There you go, StreamYard, exactly. Very Carol Maryland. That was very good.
I had to figure out.
Yeah, and I know it's always like the wrong hand. I'm like, wait a minute, not that one, this one. All right, fine, there we go. So he told me about StreamYard and how simple it is to use, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. And then you get into the overlays and stuff, and you can, I put like Chad was asking me before. I put like wallpaper up behind us as opposed to the black background, and it's like, well, this is a way, to make it look like my logo a little bit more. And also, I usually do put up an overlay of the word balloon icon, and it's usually like right where Michael is, where that StreamYard thing is. So it's cute. It almost looks like the person is, talking, and it's going into the dialogue balloon and everything. So it's like, oh, that's fun.
So I as I said, I was watching a little bit of your interview with Scott Snyder last night, and how do you? I'm sure there's always something that you can come up to talk with, about these guys because they're always working on stuff. Is there, just some topics that I guess you don't, try to steer away from, or?
Well, when something I sometimes I will have like kind of a warm-up conversation with them and say, hey, is there anything you don't want to talk about? Because I'm not a gotcha guy. This isn't 60 Minutes. It's, again, you'll forgive the swearing, but it's fucking comic books.
Yeah.
I mean, because really, fans can take this shit so seriously. And, we deserve an explanation of that. And it's like, no, you don't. No, you don't actually. And also, or, Scott teased the fact that he's pitching a Black Label Nightwing book. And this one fan last night kept persistently saying, can you tell us more? Can you tell us more? It's like, no, you see, that would be the story.
How's the story going to end? How's the story going to end?
Dude, Mike, honestly, how many times you at a con and literally someone's like, well, yeah, how does it end? And I'm like, really? Really?
But it's the journey, man. It's the journey.
But it is the journey. Because also, well, we all know that the Human Torches are going to stay dead. And it's like, Really? Congratulations. I'm kind of a knucklehead. You know, Brian exposed Superman's identity, and who's to say that the next person that writes Superman, the genie's back in the bottle?
Yeah.
Who's to say? And that's okay, because you accept the story for what it is during this status quo. Okay, fine. The Justice League lost all their powers, and they're not the Justice League anymore. Okay, that's not forever. We all know. I mean, when Captain America's Hail Hydra storyline in Secret Empire, man, I forget who I was talking to in the last 2 days, and I'm like, can you believe some of these bloggers? You've taken my heart away, and I'll never be able to love Captain America again. Well, then you've got issues, and I don't mean the ones in Mylar bags, and I don't mean to make fun, because some people do have mental issues, and I do sympathize, but it's like, why is this person like being hired to write a blog about this? And truly, man, I got to tell you, I think the level of writing on a lot of pop culture blogs has really diminished, because I feel, and this story affects me this way. We don't care. We don't care. I mean, it's okay to give good critics and critics that have journalistic skills and learn how to do journalism properly. They take themselves out of the critique and can still talk about why they felt it was bad without putting themselves in the article. And that doesn't happen anymore. And it really is like bad writing. And I really think it's a devolvement of writing in the last few years. And I could say the same thing about podcasting and YouTube, frankly. I don't like this. I don't give a fuck how you feel. Don't care. Don't care.
Mike and I know the guy who used to contribute to the blog, and he wrote like this thesis on let's nitpick Watchmen.
The TV show or the comic or both?
No, the comic.
Okay.
He's like,
good Lord.
Like,
yeah, please, let's nitpick Watchmen.
Why is Sally smoking a cigarette that looks like a planet?
All right, I agree with Mike. Nobody's done that before. I'm sorry, Chad. What were you saying?
No, he's like, why is Sally Jupiter smoking something that looks like a planet?
Who cares?
Yeah,
I mean, that's seriously, man. I know and also there's two things. There's one, that whole attitude. Well, I don't see why that was a big deal. I've read 1,000 stories like Watchmen. Yes, that were written after Watchmen, and it's like that's the thing, man. There's no context, or the other thing that drives me nuts about bloggers and podcasters. Wow, I can't believe they did X in Spider-Man. That's never happened before. And then Dan Slott will be, well, actually in the 70s, they did do something similar. And they're like, well, that was before I was born. And it's like, yeah, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. But again, a lot of people are really in their own sphere of their own lifespan. And I mean, I know this is an old movie fan. I mean, some people under 30 cannot watch black and white films. It is what it is. I don't understand it, but okay, fine. But it's like, well, that's a shame, because you're really missing the first 70 years of movie making by not watching any black and white movies, because they were making them through the 60s and even a couple in the 70s.
Yeah, I mean, okay. Give me a Marx Brothers movie any day.
Attaboy. That's what I want to hear, Mike. There you go. You're right.
So, what are your what do you think about what's kind of been happening with the industry as a whole? As in March, Diamond pretty much shut down, and then when things started back up, DC left Diamond. Do you think that that was from what you know about the industry, and do you think that was kind of they took an opportunity, or was it coming? Or
I think it was coming. And again, I keep using the analogy, hey, I'm Country Mouse. I don't own a comic book store. I don't deal with the business side of comics on a day-to-day basis to know what's happening, what's in the publishers' minds when it comes to distribution. But all that said, AT&T bought Time Warner or whatever it is. And, obviously one of the assets of that is DC Comics. There are a lot of quirks about the direct market that a corporate master may not understand or care about. Like, look, we know that all media is released on Tuesdays universally, with the exception of comics, they're released on Wednesdays. And they're like, why? What's, and also the relationship of publisher, distributor, and comic store has supposedly always been, hey, we all share a third of this process and profits. And that's not the case, because obviously DC has pulled away from the distributor, and that makes it harder now for the retailer to get DC Comics. So I do think that AT&T was a big factor in that. I think the rush to make it happen was likely because of the pandemic, because they felt, hey, we've got product. If our distributor isn't available, find other distributors, which is a very understandable corporate move. I mean, that happens in any sort of business. If, you can't get your product to the people. But yeah, it is. I mean, I had a really great discussion about it with Sal from Around Comics, and Chad from Comic Core, and Rich Johnson. Not only as a bleeding cool guy, I knew that he was going to be more on top of the story than I was. And I mean, that, Rich does a lot of rumor, and I know that about his website, but he also does some serious reporting too. And I knew that I'd be talking. I mean, and again, he did tell us about some rumors that he had heard, but it was good to hear, and also to get the UK and European perspective, because Diamond, not only was taking care of North American comics, but Diamond UK was getting, product to all of Western Europe. And so Batman is global. Everybody wants new Batman stories. And there's no real plan. There's still no real plan in terms of how that's going to get to them internationally, other than are they going to now from now on have to wait for the trades and get them through bookstore channels? I honestly don't know. They might. It's really weird. And then of course too, not only DC but Marvel, both companies choosing to release a few low selling issues purely as digital and not putting out paper comics, doing it with Supergirl, and obviously Marvel's doing it with Hawkeye and several other titles. And that was a surprise. And it's like, again, it's their product. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, none of us know how the world is really going to look. I mean, I know states are reopening and stuff. Also, some states that have already reopened, they're already getting, another wave of the virus too. Yeah. So it's messed up, and it's going to change things dramatically. We talked about conventions. Who knows how long it's going to take before now, not only the promoters feeling safe enough to say, hey, we're open, but the attendees not only willing to make the car trip, but willing to make the flight. I'm not excited about getting on a plane anytime soon.
Yeah. Even the creators, willing to, put themselves in.
Yep. Yeah. No, you're right, man. And then, hey, man, there are, just like all of the country, and I'm sure all of the world, there are people like, hey, I'll take my chances. And in fact, I've talked to con organizers that really are like, so you're doing your show, and it's like, well, there's a virus going on. Well, I'm not worried. Yeah, but you're like 70. Well, I'm still not worried. And it's like, okay. I mean, again, well, I have made a decision, lad. I'll let you know. And, I just, it is what it is. And I mean, yeah, and it'll be very interesting. I mean, my God, I can't believe the casinos are opened and the way they're even operating right now. It's very weird.
Well, I think something that was kind of interesting that just came up this week is that San Diego is going to be virtual, and it's basically going to be free.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad they're doing it. And that's the other thing. And truly, I've been kind of talking to Mitch about if he wanted to do something similar, at least branding some Word Balloon episodes as Terrificon, virtual panels. I'd be happy as hell to do it. And maybe we will end up doing it with some of the celebrity guests that he was planning on having and stuff. I'd be happy because you want to keep the brand alive.
Right.
And so I get it. I do get it. And we'll see what happens this summer. It's going to be very interesting. But yeah, I'm glad they're doing it. And I'm also really glad, and I think it's a smart move for them to like throw it open and be like, hey, we all love the San Diego experience. We all live vicariously for the years. I mean, I don't go every year. I haven't gone the last 2 years. And sometimes it's like, okay, and it sucks. I always feel like I'm a kid with a broken leg and I'm looking from my window at everybody playing on the street. And it's like, oh man, I wish I was there. So, I mean, so that's good. I'm glad they're doing it. I think it's still a big event. I don't know if they'll ever release or, how many eyeballs are watching, but I think it's going to be very interesting how they conduct things online. And again, I mean, that's from a I always feel this way sometimes, and sadly, we're all in the thick of this. But I can remove myself from the immediate crappy stuff and be like, isn't this interesting how everyone's reacting to this? And it's creativity is inspired by it. That's what Brian was saying the last time he was on. That and it's true. I mean, when we're in this kind of situation, people will crawl in a ball and protect themselves, and that's totally understandable. Other people will look at the situation and go, all right, how do I work around this?
Yeah.
That's what I've been doing.
Last night, I just was talking to Matthew Dow Smith, and he was like, "Yeah, this has finally given me some time to do, a project that I've been wanting to do, since I started in comics."
He's a good dude. He's a great artist, and the stuff he's been doing online has been really, really cool. So now I like Matthew a lot. That's awesome to hear. No, I understand, man. Hey, and then you get the weird serendipitous, like, oh my God, we weren't planning for this, like Brubaker and Marcos Martin releasing Friday as a panel syndicate digital comic when there are no comics. Yeah. And the thing does great because it's like, oh my God, there's a new Ed Brubaker comic that I can order and just click on my, laptop and read. Fantastic. And that was crazy. And I'm glad that I had the chance to talk to Ed about that. That was amazing.
I wonder if in the case of if the Comic-Con being online might end up making it better for the person at home watching anyway, because now it'll be geared towards that person, because obviously it's not going to change. San Diego Comic-Con ain't going to change for me. I wasn't going to be there anyway.
Yeah, I think it gives people the opportunity to experience the panels, at least, which are always terrific. And also, sometimes the people that don't go are like, oh, it's all about the movies, it's all about TV now. And it's like, they're not wrong that there's a lot of coverage for that stuff. But the great thing is, if you're there and you want a pure comic book experience, there are at least 10 panels a day that have to do with comics and that will absolutely delight you. Plus, God, they do incredible academic panels about people that are writing their doctorate theses and stuff about the history of comics. And I go to those, and my buddy Rob Salkowitz, who is a great pop culture analyst for Forbes.com. Usually he and I are in there, and a couple academics and stuff. And it's like, oh, did you ever hear about this amazing pro-U.S. propaganda comic strip that ran in Japanese newspapers after World War II? And it's like, no, I didn't. Please tell me more. And it's like an hour on that. And it's like, wow, that is amazing. So truly, I mean, so that's the thing. Like, there's a good esoteric subject there that, literally, man, I mean, that's what I love about San Diego. And honestly, that's really the last show the last big show. New York really doesn't do that much. They pretty much stick to the hits, both TV and film, but also, comics and everything. But like San Diego really does take itself seriously in terms of like, no, we're here for everybody. And they really are. And I love it. Like, a person that's into manga and anime is at the same show as I am, and they're having a completely different experience because they're going to all the manga and anime panels and stuff.
So, talking about the more academic side of it, I talked to Zach Crucy, who did his doctoral thesis on Steve Ditko.
Yeah,
that was a fun interview.
Zach's awesome. Yeah, Zach used to work for Discount Comic Book Service. Yeah. So one of the new DC distributors. And no, he's a great dude. And he and DCBS created a convention for a while down in Fort Wayne.
Appleseed.
There we go, Appleseed. Thank you, man. I knew Apple was in the title. Yeah. Got it. Again, Zach is such a passionate guy about comics history. You got Steranko to come down one year, and Dennis Cowan, and I got to interview Dennis Cowan there one year. I love Zach, and I it's funny. Hillary Barton and I were talking. He's like, "You got to talk about Steve Ditko," and I'm like, "You're right," and I will. Yeah, I'll get to that. Oh no, absolutely, man. No, I'm glad you had the conversation because again, they know the name. They know that he co-created Spider-Man, but God, Ditko's history and philosophies and just his work should really be alongside. I mean, Kirby. I guess Kirby created more characters, but really, I mean, honestly, I think the two of them are. He has to be in the discussion of some of the greatest creators of all time. Steve Ditko. He was amazing.
Now, if when you're cons and when you're not interviewing, are you do you back issue dive or
A little
original
bit.
art or
Yeah, a
yeah?
little bit. Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, and shame on me, but so many great television shows are still not available commercially on, and so I'm in the
I
bootleg.
hear you
I am
on that.
totally in the DVD bootleg section and stuff, and truly, because I do. I used to be like that with VHSs prior to DVDs in the '90s when I'd go to cons. But yeah, absolutely. And also, when I'm not doing panels, I don't do a lot of floor interviews anymore because I feel like a lot of shows do. And I also feel like I'm impeding on a creator's time
Yeah.
because like, a lot of times I'll even just when I'm schmoozing and just be like, hey, how you doing? Suddenly realize that there are three people waiting behind me with like, short boxes and stuff for them to sign. And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm a jerk. I got in here on a press pass. You actually paid to get in here. Let me get out of the way. Please talk to the man or woman. I'm like, I'm so, and I do. I apologize profusely. So, so when I'm not doing panels, I'm networking and just because I would rather get them on like what we're doing now and do, an hour on the phone or on Skype or video rather than 20 minutes at a show or 10 minutes at a show. Because, again, I like doing in-depth, like Michael said, and I appreciate the compliment, Michael. I like doing in-depth interviews. Coming from radio and having to break every 6 minutes or so for another commercial block, it's so nice to have an unfettered conversation and just do it. And I really, I mean, that is the best thing about podcasting is it really allows me to do a long form thing. I mean, I always say, if you have the chance to talk to George Lucas and you have a choice between 10 minutes or 2 hours, ask a Star Wars fan which they'd prefer. And I mean, and luckily, a lot of these comic creators, because I've been talking to them for a long time, they're cool and they, Mark Waid is my great exception. I love Mark, and Mark, is cool about it. But he's always like, 40 minutes. That's it, 40 minutes. And I'm like, okay, no problem.
Time. It's not enough time.
Cool. No, well, you're right, Mike. Although, no, we do good. And he's like, I'll come back. We can talk more. and he does. So I shouldn't complain. But yeah, he cracks me up. He's the best was again my friend Marty Pasco. We talked for 4 hours on one session. He's, I can't believe we talked for 4 hours. Oh my god, that was Marty. And then. And Mark for a couple of weeks, like, are you done talking to Marty Pasco yet? Why don't you talk a little bit more with Marty Pasco? And it was just jab because he loved Marty too. But yeah, man, no. And again, that's when I know, all right, these guys like me because they can tease me and feel comfortable about it, and that cracks me up. I love when that happens. It's the best.
So, are you reading? Have you been reading anything since new comics weren't coming out that? You kind of went back and you said, oh, this is, good that I, wanted to read again and I forgot, So, so what was that for you?
Well, in particular, I've got The Absolute New Frontier, and I love sitting down with that. And actually, I was on a serious Darwin Cook jag for a while. Not only that, but also because I heard from Brubaker, they're finally going to release IDW, those last Parker crime graphic novels that Darwin adapted, and there's going to be new material that I believe I'm reasonably certain Sean Phillips is the artist and Ed is writing, Brubaker's writing. So that's great. And I have three giant absolute, like I've got the Absolute New Frontier, and then the IDW equivalent to that for Parker is called the Martini Edition, and it has the first three Parker novels and back matter in there as well. And then also DC released like a best of Darwin Cook collection outside of the New Frontier, and it had like that solo issue that he did and a bunch of like, and Batman Ego was a one shot that a prestige format one shot that he did, stuff like that, and little things here and there. So yeah, I really that, and also the Tasham DC books. I didn't get the big giant one that'll cut off your circulation if you're reading it on your lap. I got the ones that are each decade or each era, Golden Age, Silver Age, Bronze Age, and so yeah, I've been reading those too. So yeah, isn't that crazy? I've been reading a lot more DC than Marvel, which is surprising because I've got my buddies at Marvel and I've got my favorite books. Matt Rosenberg, I just talked to him. I was bummed that the 5th issue of Hawkeye is going to be digital. I thought it was great. Isn't it interesting that now there's a whole, and in fact, I really wasn't aware of it until the last day or two, that now people are like, Punisher should go away from Marvel. And it's like, It's a story. Will you calm down? Well, you know,
Yeah.
the police are glorifying the emblem. It's like,
Yeah,
I'm
it's
sorry.
more like, don't let the police ruin it for us.
right. Yes. I mean, that's the thing, man. Literally, I consider myself very, very much a liberal. Very much a liberal. But sometimes when I hear these kind of things coming from where I think is the starting point of my own politics, it's like, relax. Come on. That's not no, you are making it a problem. It's not a problem. And
Yeah,
again,
yeah.
you know, this is where, you know, not every policeman is doing this. What were you going to say, Michael? Forgive me.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, it's like, I mean, if the Punisher was a cop, then I could see it, but he's definitely not a cop, and like,
Well, but again, I guess it's the idea of vigilantism and stuff. And it's like, well, how far do you want to take that?
But that should be
Because now-
antithetical. I mean, that's
Well, and
antithetical to the police. It's crazy.
And again,
Makes
I
no
mean, you
sense
could
whatsoever.
you could say the same thing about Batman if you're going that far. It's like, well, then get rid of Batman because he works on his own rules and doesn't follow what should be proper police procedure and everything.
Yeah.
It's
definitely not going by the book.
Yeah, it's like everybody's just got to relax. I mean, I agree with them taking the cop reality shows off of television because I do think that glorifies bad behavior on man, I hate on both sides. All that BS. Sorry. But no, honestly, like that I get. That I do get because I just think it shows the worst of both the cops and the people that are being arrested. And it just, to me, it was always embarrassing. And I couldn't believe when they said Cops is being canceled after 33 years. It's like, God damn, it is that old.
Yeah.
Well, yes, one, it is still on, but also 33 goddamn years. Jesus Christ. That's insane.
We're all very old.
Yes, indeed. Bad boys, what you gonna do? Ridiculous. So there you go.
Can you mention who you might have coming up soon? No? Okay.
The hot exclusive.
No, I'll tell you, I mean, honestly, they're on paper, but we haven't I always feel better after something's recorded. So we did Snyder Last Night live, and I did Rob Burnett and Larry Young afterwards. I'm going to release, like I said, a tribute to Denny, probably, if not tomorrow, definitely on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've got scheduled Richard Starkings, who great letterer and the man behind Elephant Men. We'll be talking in the morning. Actually, I guess 1 o'clock your time, noon my time, 1 o'clock Eastern. And then Monday night, I'm talking to Kieran Dwyer about a bunch of books. And then, Jeff Johns and I tentatively are supposed to record a couple more Stargirl recaps. We missed a week, but we're scheduled to talk on Tuesday. And Shelley Bond is coming back with China Cluxon, and they are talking about, oh God, what's it called again? Inside Art? Yeah, Inside Art, which is a really cool, fun indie anthology and puzzle book and game book that features a lot of indie creators. And it's all going to women comic store owners and the LGBTQ community comic owners as well. And I'll tell you, Shelley, I have so much respect for her. She was one of the best Vertigo editors ever. She always has an eye on new talent and is the person that discovered so many of my favorite creators, like, hey, let's give Ed Brubaker a shot. I like this Low Life book that he made, stuff like that. I mean, that's Shelley. I mean, she's really Karen Berger deserves all the accolades of running Vertigo, but she had these incredible men and women working under her, like Axel Alonso and Will Dennis and Shelley and Joan Hilty. And I like talking to editors because they are the real tastemakers in comics, especially for the big two, where they take a chance on these people, and like they'll take a chance on a Tom King and some of these other people that you've never heard of. Or Brad Meltzer back in the day, Bob Schreck doing that for Brad back in the 2000s, following Kevin Smith on Green Arrow and stuff. Nobody wants to follow Kevin Smith. Well, this guy who's written a few crime books, he seems to want to. And it's like, wow, look at what Brad Meltzer can do with Green Arrow. That's amazing. So that'll give you like a handful of like who's coming up. And I got a few others, but like I said, I feel better like saying it after the fact. Kelly Sue and I are supposed to talk soon. Rucka and I are supposed to talk soon again.
Oh, that's fine. It wasn't supposed to be a gotcha.
No. It's cool. It's cool. No. But yeah, I mean, honestly, like even as I tease Word Balloon episodes, a lot of times I'm like, yeah, I got some stuff coming up. Because, like, for instance, Brian Hitch and I were supposed to talk yesterday, and he had some computer trouble, and he's like, hey, man, can we postpone? I'm like, yeah. Or Kelly Sue and I were scheduled to talk one of the days that the riots really, or actually, it was on the pause that All Media did that Tuesday, 2 Tuesdays ago, and Kelly and I were scheduled to talk, and I'm like, we shouldn't talk, and she's like, you're 100% right. I'm glad you'd said it. I would have said it if you hadn't. And I'm like, yeah. I go, no, man, it's not right. I'm like, let's take a day off. So we haven't rescheduled yet, but she's coming back. I mean, I'm very, very lucky, man. Seriously, guys, because 15 years of doing this, it's nice that the creators trust me, the ones who know me, and I'm still introducing myself. I'm not. I have no ego about this nonsense. I mean, I'm just another guy with a puppet show, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of time, you meet these people, and that's the other great thing is, much like Bendis, when I was at the last Terrificon, I was talking to Bob Rozakis, the Answer Man from DC, from the Bronze Age. I love that guy, and I'm a big fan of his writing. He would always, I don't know if you guys remember that feature. It would, like, literally, there'd be like questions about, like, who's the last guy to join the Legion? And he'd look it up there, look up the research, and he was the Answer Man. So he didn't know who I was, but literally on one side of him was Paul Kupperberg, and on the other side was Chaykin, and both are like, oh, no, you want to talk to John. John knows what he's doing. He's like, oh, okay. Because, again, there's thousands of us that are doing comic book podcasts. It's tough. It's not easy. I'm lucky that I started when I did. I can say, well, I've had these people on. Maybe you might want to come on my show.
Oh, I want to, thank you for, agreeing to talk to us, because it's like when I was like, who would be somebody really interesting to talk to? John Siuntres. Yeah, I mean,
thanks, man.
I've been listening to him for years, and so
thank you.
Yeah.
Honestly, I know that's very flattering, man. Honestly, I really appreciate the interest, because we're all doing the same thing. I mean, we're doing it different ways because we're different people. But yeah, no, thanks, man. I'm glad you gave enough of a crap to talk. That's cool.
So, where can people find your stuff? I know you have the Patreon, you have the podcast. Want to give out your links?
Sure, man. Well, like I said, it's right there on my my little title card there, wordballoon.com, although I'm a week behind putting stuff there. Spreaker is my audio platform. Spreaker, Spreaker. I was told there'd be no spelling today. And and so that's where I post my stuff initially. And then I've got my Word Balloon channel. It's all one word under the Word Balloon channel. Wordballoon.com again. Yeah, that's my website. And yeah, I do have a Patreon if people want to contribute. It's patreon.com/wordballoon. And people have been incredibly generous. And I really appreciate the support. Like I said, lost the gig at the beginning of April, the radio gig. I'm not sure when radio is going to be hiring back. But I am taking this time to expand Word Balloon, doing video. And I've got 15 years of interviews. I think I have a couple books in me if I really want to transcribe these things. I mean, that's really the inspiration for Word Balloon came from growing up with Amazing Heroes and Comics Journal and Comics Interview, where we'd get these great in-depth interviews with creators in print, and you knew what was going through their minds at that moment. And I think that stuff is kind of invaluable, and especially now, 15 years later, and I can look back at when Robert Kirkman was first figuring out Walking Dead, and when again, Bendis's runs on Daredevil and Avengers, and all of his Marvel stuff from the last 15 years, and then now with the Superman stuff. So I mean, I think it's good, and I think it's good to have a printed or oral history of what's happening in comics, because the blogs they're becoming very clickbaity and seem to be not as interested as doing long form stuff. And that's what happens sometimes when websites get bought by bigger companies, and they don't care about comics. It's just another thing, and really they're into it more for the movies and TV coverage.
So I have at least one last question.
Sure.
You kind of touched on it in the beginning, and when you were asked who you haven't been able to interview, and you got Grant, you got to talk to Grant Morrison. So now who's at the top of that list?
Well, Neil Gaiman. I'd like to still talk to Neil. Who haven't I talked to? Because I'll be honest, there are a couple classic creators whose personality has been made very apparent to me, and I've had several opportunities to talk to one guy in particular. I won't name him.
That's fine.
But and you might be able to tell, but I'm just like, yeah, it's okay. I'm not really interested in talking to him. And thankfully it's a very short list, and then really I can't, beyond the one guy, I can't think of anybody else. So yeah, who else? Carrie Bates would be a guy I'd love to talk to from the Bronze Age. And my God, so many great things. And truly, I was thinking about that when you said that initially, that I should really talk to DC because they stay in touch with their vets and stuff like that. And my God, Carrie was such a great writer. Not only his run on The Flash, which was just epic, but also great Justice League writer, great Superman writer. So yeah, in Marvel, I'm trying to think of anybody. Finally got to talk to Roy Thomas a couple years ago. That was great, and that was one that I'd been wanting to do forever. Walt's been on, Simonson.
How about that Mike Norton?
What's that, Mike Norton? I love Mike Norton.
Yeah. How about that Mike Norton?
Everybody's talked to Mike Norton.
Well, I don't know if I want to do Word Balloon, Julie. That's right. It's my horrible Mike Norton. I don't sound like that at all. And I'm like, sure you don't. It's okay. I seriously, Mike and Tim Seeley have been like two of my best local friendships of comic creators. And Mike is awesome because he's such a quiet guy, and I'm sure I've told this story before on my show, but because he really is he's just quiet, and I'm like, Mike, if I'm annoying you and I'm coming up too much to talk to you and stuff, this is about after a year of knowing him. I'm like, I'll back off, man. And he's like, oh, John, I'm sorry. He goes, I'm sitting at my draft board. I'm totally in my own world when I'm drawing and stuff. He goes, sometimes I forget to be social. He's like, we're friends. It's cool. And I'm like, okay, good. And so now, and literally since then, every time I see Mike, he grabs me and he hugs me. And it's hilarious because he's, towers over me and I'm a short little fat man that's built like a fire plug and everything. So yeah, it's like he literally has to bend over and it's grab me and stuff. And it just kills me. But I'm like, all right, good. We are friends. Okay. But yeah, he's awesome. And he's a guy, esoteric. I love talking about bad 80s action movies. And he knows them all and seeks them out and becomes an expert on them. And it is so fun. You ever see The Exterminator with Robert Ginty? No, I haven't. Oh, it's awesome. You got to watch it. I'm like, all right.
So it seems like that's what he's been doing since lockdown is
No, he was doing that. He was doing that anyway. Don't kid yourself, man. But I love that about him. That's what's awesome, man, is learning these little quirks about these guys and women and what they like. It's funny as hell. Kelly Sue is like my little sister. I love her. She's the best. And she is so into this, the same nerd crap that any guy that I know would be into. And I'm like, oh, that's so cool. I'm like, that's why Fraction married you. This is great. So,
Alrighty. Well, again, thanks for taking the time. It was great talking to you and kind of geeking out a little bit.
My pleasure, guys. Absolutely. Good luck with the show. And thank you very much again for thinking of having me on. It sounds like you're talking to a lot of great creators. So it sounds like I'm in good company. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I would say that what you've done has kind of inspired me. So.
Oh, I appreciate that. That's very kind. Thank you.
Most professional voice in comic book podcasting.
Wow. 20 years in radio before starting to do the podcast. So 10 years, I guess, before doing the podcast kind of helps. But yeah. Thanks, man. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, have a good evening. Stay healthy and stay safe.
Yeah.
And I'll let you know when this goes up, and I'll include all your links in it.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot. Yep. That's great. Good talking to you guys.
All right. Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.